Did you know the Scythians and Sarmatians had so much gender equality that women fought alongside men on the battlefield? Some sources even say Sarmatian women couldn't get married until they fought in battle. The nomadic tribes in Central Asia proved their resilience as they conquered the harsh landscapes and the many invading armies. They fought against great empires built on war, like the Romans and the Huns. But these nomadic tribes proved the bane of organized imperial troops. Two leading tribes were the Scythians and the Sarmatians. They mostly lived around the northern coast of the Black Sea, which stretches from modern-day Romania to the Volga River in Russia. Some contemporaries even said the Scythian territory stretched to modern-day China. The two tribes were connected to each other. They were master horse riders and shared the same language, religion, and cultural practices. Dozens of ancient historians wrote about these two tribes, yet their contributions to the pastoral nomadic lifestyle have gone unnoticed by many people today. These two tribes might not have left any written documents of their own. Still, they impacted ancient empires, and they changed the way that ordinary people made their lives in the harsh Eurasian steppe in Central Asia. Who were the Scythians? The Scythians did not have a writing system, so everything we know about them is based on the artifacts they left behind and what others wrote about them. We don't even know when the Scythian culture began. The first written evidence of the Scythian people comes from the 8th century BCE, but they were probably already established as a migratory tribe before that. Historians believe the Scythians came from several ancient Indo-Iranian groups that probably migrated from Central Asia or southern Siberia. This group appears to have lived north of the Black Sea, but because they were nomadic, their territory was fluid and could stretch as far as the Caucasus and Dobruja regions. They were expert horse riders, making it easier for them to travel across large land areas. However, the Scythians were not only nomadic horse people, they were also raiders, and their first historical records are of Assyro-Babylonian origin. The documents discuss how the Scythians would attack towns and fortresses in the Near East. Eventually, these raids influenced the politics of the other civilizations in the area, leading to Scythians serving as a political destabilizer. Although the Scythians absorbed parts of the societies that they raided, they also proved to be a different kind of culture. They did not settle into cities like the more well-known Mesopotamian civilizations, but they were still powerful enough to attack the Assyrians and Babylonians and live to tell the tale. Scythian society adapted over time, especially as the Scythians came into contact with other civilizations. The Scythians were many tribes bound together by loyalty or subjugation to the royal Scythians. There was also a high king to whom the other tribes answered. As time passed, more wealth passed to the royal Scythians, and the differences between the aristocracy and the other tribes grew. Although the Scythians were raiders, they grew powerful enough to engage in trade, especially during the 4th century BCE. They served as a mediator between the Eastern European tribes and the Greeks during the Peloponnesian War to supply them with cereal crops. The Scythians disliked farming or settling in one place, although some tribes appear to have been farmers. Some historians believe these sedentary tribes were actually serfs under the Scythians, but they are still looking into this possibility. Either way, the Scythians did take advantage of the trade market and even traded pelts, furs, livestock, and horses. With all their new wealth, the Scythians procured manufactured items from the other civilizations around them. Their art increasingly reflected the influence of these other civilizations as well. Their art usually included animals like horses and birds, but the Greek influence increased as the Scythians traded with them. Soon, this trade increased as the Scythians began settling near Greek towns near the northern shore of the Black Sea. Although the Scythians absorbed aspects of Greek art, they do not appear to have absorbed much of the Greek religion. The Scythians worshipped Indo-Iranian gods, and the goddess Tabiti was the center of the pantheon. Their religion played a critical part in their daily lives, and the priests, called the Inari, had so much influence and power that they were buried with expensive ceremonial items. Their religion also venerated women. Women held critical societal roles and even fought on the battlefield as great warriors. Their community was built around war, and becoming a warrior was crucial to one's social standing in the Scythian culture. The Scythians even worshipped a god of war, and their skill in warfare showed how they differed from the people around them. The Scythians specialized in cavalry warfare, which gave them a significant advantage over the traditional armies in the Near East. They used several weapons, such as spears, javelins, swords, and daggers. However, some of the Scythian swords were ceremonial, especially the ones made of gold and covered in animal designs. But historians believe the Scythians used other swords while fighting on horses and the ground. Even though the Scythians had these traditional elements in their army, a vital part of their military strength came from their mounted archers. These soldiers shot arrows while riding horseback, and their skill and speed made them dangerous. The bow was the most popular weapon, helping the Scythians scatter their enemies from a distance as far away as 200 yards. Anyone who encountered the Scythians found them to be powerful enemies. They even managed to defeat King Darius I around 513 BCE. Although the Scythians never engaged in a direct battle with Darius's army, they used their fast guerrilla tactics to halt the Persian invasion. The Scythians were different than anyone else the Persians had encountered. They fought with a speed that was difficult to defend against in ancient times, and their cavalry allowed them to rearrange themselves quickly and work the battlefield to their advantage. Even the mighty Scythians could not last forever. By the 3rd century CE, they were gone. The Sarmatians, Goths, and Celts encroached on Scythian territory. The Scythians eventually assimilated with the other nomadic tribes in the region and lost the trademarks of their culture, writing out of the pages of history. Who were the Sarmatians? The Sarmatians were also a nomadic tribe of warriors with many similarities to the Scythians because they were related to them. The Sarmatians mixed with the Sarmate people early in their history, and the Sarmate people were genetically and culturally associated with the Scythians. The Sarmatian people conquered the Sarmate people in the 4th and 3rd centuries BCE, blending their tribes and cultures. Much like the Scythians, the Sarmatian people were made up of several different tribes that were not politically unified. They also rode horses, and some of them maintained a semi-nomadic lifestyle. The Sarmatians relied upon agriculture and their herds to survive. They traded with Mediterranean and Pontic civilizations, usually exchanging furs and pelts for riches like armor or jewelry. Acquiring wealth appears to have played an essential role in Sarmatian culture. They not only conducted raids with their large cavalry, but also hired themselves out as mercenaries for the Bosporan Kingdom and Roman Empire. However, the Sarmatians did not achieve as large of a wealth disparity as the Scythians did, although tribal leaders acquired more riches than ordinary people. The Sarmatians were tribal like the Scythians, but their leaders sometimes combined their tribes into confederations. Because the tribes all shared a similar language and culture, they could easily integrate or force other tribes to unite with them to increase their numbers. Some historians believe the Sarmatians formed confederations to gain strength or acquire easier access to riches from raids. Although the Sarmatians were invested in gaining wealth, some historians think they were less interested in the arts. They left behind fewer artifacts, and the ones we have are less detailed and rich than the Scythian artifacts. However, if the owner was wealthy, it was made of gold. They used many animal representations in their art and had jewelry. Many of the Sarmatian art pieces we have today came from ancient burials. Important people received burial mounds filled with personal items and gifts. Both men and women had burial mounds, and it appears that women had much influence in Sarmatian society. Sarmatian women held some religious importance, although historians are unclear if they were priestesses. Most of our information about Sarmatian religious practices comes from their burial mounds, because burials were interconnected with religion, and the burial ceremony included ritual bonfires. The Sarmatians practiced ancestor veneration, so the burial mounds tended to be close together. However, only the burial mounds of women contained a small portable altar. This suggests that only women could use these altars, indicating the possibility that they were priestesses. Women were not only important to Sarmatian religious activities, but also served a vital role in the military. Historians believe the Greek myths about the Amazon warriors came from the Sarmatian women. They fought alongside the men in battle, and some classical authors discuss how the Sarmatians would cauterize the right breast of girls at birth for battle archery. Historians aren't sure if this really occurred, but Sarmatian women were seen as great warriors. Warfare was central to the Sarmatian culture because they needed hunting and raiding to survive living on the steppes. They were ruthless and intimidating, which is why they were hired as mercenaries for other empires. The Sarmatian military structure developed over time, from the 7th to the 4th century BCE. Everybody who could fight was required to. Starting in the 4th century BCE, the Sarmatians began selecting their male or female warriors, which eventually led to a warrior class among the tribes. However, they didn't have a strict army structure until the 2nd century CE, when their society became more hierarchical. Like the Scythians, the heart of the Sarmatian army was their cavalry, and most of their horseback riders were light-armored archers. Although they did have some infantry, these soldiers were likely assimilated people or poor Sarmatians who could not afford a horse. The bow and arrow were typical, but the Sarmatians also had mounted lance fighters who tended to have heavier armor. They also had short and long swords. The Sarmatians primarily used the latter while on horseback. The Sarmatians did utilize the metal-scale armor that the Scythians used, but most warriors could not afford it. They usually had leather or hide armor and would sew scales onto that if they had any. Wealthy warriors also began using mail armor in the 1st century CE, although the first complete set of mail armor didn't come until the 2nd century CE. It is clear their armor developed as they encountered different cultures and empires. The Sarmatians had many military engagements. Still, their first mention in written history is their fight with the Persians in 513 BCE. They allied with the Scythians and helped them defeat King Darius I, an impressive achievement. Few tribes could fight against the Persians and live to tell the tale. The Sarmatians also fought in several Roman conflicts, fighting both for and against the Romans depending on the battle. However, the Sarmatians and Romans soon fell into hostilities after the Dacian Wars. They would not be subdued until Emperor Marcus Aurelius finally defeated them during the Marcomannic Wars from 166 to 180 CE. Of course, that wasn't the end of the Sarmatians. They remained active in the region until the 5th or 6th century CE. At that time, the Goths and the Huns were invading the Black Sea area, and they either integrated or destroyed the tribes they encountered. These groups would eventually end the Roman Empire, and the Sarmatians were scattered. Many assimilated into other tribes, losing the cultural markers that set the Sarmatians apart from others. Like the Scythians, the Sarmatians faded from history, but the world would be very different without both groups. It is important to remember these horseback riders who stood up to empires and lived their lives in freedom. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the Sarmatians and Scythians, check out our book, Sarmatians and Scythians, a captivating guide to the barbarians of Iranian origins and how these ancient tribes fought against the Roman Empire, Goths, Huns, and Persians. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.